Hey everybody, Doug here from 2 Plus Tough, and today I am hanging out. And I just wanted to chat with folks. It's been a little bit, been a crazy week for me personally, but I wanted to get back at it, hang out with folks. I'm excited because this is the week where rules are being released. Now, I will be honest with you, Games Workshop sent me all of them in advance, but the amount of information was just overwhelming for me. Like, it was just too much, you know what I mean? So I broke it down to focusing on factions that I was interested in, and then going over all the different armies and being like, well, what is their flavor of play? What are keywords that are important to each faction? Getting a baseline of knowledge before better players of other armies come in and flesh it all out for me. But the one faction I really did lean into in terms of my mental energy was the Flesh Eater Courts. If you don't know, I picked up, or Games Workshop was kind enough to send me the release box for the second wave that they released, and then I went retroactively to all my local stores and I picked up all their Jarian delegations and stuff like that I could find. And so I accrued very quickly like 4K of Flesh Eater Courts. I just released the video of the custom case I did for them, so I'm very excited. You know, and so when looking over their rules, I just got really stoked for how they're going to be playing on the table, the ways that my specific vision for my Flesh Eater Court can come to life. Specifically, I want to focus on horrors. I'll talk a little bit more about that. This is just kind of a hangout and chat. I'm just excited about something and I wanted to share some enthusiasm. If you have any other questions regarding any larger gameplay elements or whatever, go ahead and drop them. I'm happy to give opinions on anything else. My overall, if you're just very curious about my thoughts on the releases as a whole, I said this on my Discord, which you can find the link down below through the link tree. There's an icon there. But essentially, I think Fire Slayers won the order book. I think that because they were the most well-defined in terms of what they were becoming. They're going from an ill-defined army to, I think, a much better defined one. And them leaning into the priestly aspect, I feel like in a way that is different than other order factions, like magnitude's different in terms of its intensity, is really cool. So I think they're the winners for that. I think the losers, if there had to be one, is definitely going to be, I hear the most gnashing of teeth from the Lumineth. And I think that has a mixture to do with, like a lot of these factions, where a particular buff or synergy comes from has sometimes moved. So for example, Flesh Eater Courts used to have Orator as like a command ability you could do, but now the Cardinal gives you the chance to be a speaker. So it's the same ability, it just moved somewhere else. A lot of that happened, and then also unit configurations, regiment configurations rather. So I'm not going to say that anyone lost anything because the whole game got reset, but in terms of the gnashing of teeth level, I think Fire Slayers won, Lumineth not so much. For Chaos, personally, I'm very interested in Blades of Corn tonight. After my game night, I'm going to be picking up my first Blades of Corn units because I do want to expand in that army. I'm going to do the Cull's Ravagers straight from the books. Very excited about that. As far as ones that I think turned out the best, Skaven's hard to argue, man. It's just they just look good in my opinion. Weakest is, I don't really have an answer for this one because Chaos factions, specifically like Tzeentch and Slaanesh, are just armies that I have just never understood how to play well, like ever. Sorry, my music just kind of died there for a second for no real reason. But yeah, so those are my thoughts there. Most people seem pretty lukewarm on Hedonites. I don't know. As far as death stuff goes, it's got to be my boys the Flesh Eater Courts who are the winners. I know tactically it's probably Soulblight, but like let's be serious. You clicked on this icon for a reason. We want to talk about some seriously cool looking Flesh Eater Courts. So friends, let's move into that discussion. I got them pulled up on the screen here. Let me just bring this down to get a little bit more out of the way. And if you have any questions, thoughts, or differing opinions, please let me know. Let me recenter this on me a bit. You're watching the internet magic happen. All right. There we go. Not covering everything up. Woohoo. Flesh Eater Courts, Lord Billy. Hey, hey, hey. And we got Elect Man 24. Hey. So, I always try to make the content that I wish was on the internet. So we're going to go through Flesh Eater Courts, how they work, and what I'm excited about. Battle traits. We've already seen these online, but I'll go through them real quick. This army is centered around the idea of noble deeds. Noble deed points, you all start with 0. You can have a maximum of 6 at once. And each time a friendly Flesh Eater Courts hero uses the fight ability, after it's been resolved, give that hero a number of noble deed points equal to the number of damage points inflicted by that ability. Not how many guys he killed, damage points inflicted, that's important. Do not count attacks made with companion weapons. And what that means is the weapon profile, like when you look at the actual weapon line, if there's a special note, it'll say companion. You just don't count those. But it's pretty clear which ones you do and do not count. Each time a friendly Flesh Eater Courts priest, that's one way. You get noble deed points by hurting people. The second way is when a priest successfully does a prayer. You get a noble deed point. The third one is when a wizard successfully casts a spell. You get a noble deed point. Now, notably, in the old book, there were a few more ways wrapped up into the battle traits. You had like command abilities and that kind of stuff, or heroic actions where you could grand orator speech and try to get some more. Like I said, that's been moved around a bit, but we'll get to that. Those are your 3 main avenues: hurting people, praying, and spells. Feeding Frenzy, if you have 6, then all of the friendly Flesh Eater Court units, including companion weapons, so this is an important distinction, get +1 to their attack if they're wholly within 12 inches of a hero with any kind of noble deed points up to 6. So by that what I mean is, if you achieve 6, now you have a bubble. As long as you have 6 noble deed points, everyone in 12 inches gets +1 attack to all their weapon profiles. That's awesome. And what's cool is we're going to get into the distinction between different kinds of heroes, but this is universal. Your cheapest, crappiest little courtier guy, all the way to your most expensive Usherin himself, whatever, or a zombie dragon if you want to use a non-named character, all have the same thing. Get 6 noble deeds, +1 attack. Now, it doesn't stack, okay? So you can't have a unit that's like overlapped by 3 bubbles, and nope, it's just if you're within 12 inches wholly of anyone with 6 noble deeds, but it's cool. Let's see. That's for all heroes. Let's get into the distinctions. Essentially, in this faction, there are 2 branches of heroes, and I'm going to say 3 branches of units, okay? Your 2 hero ones are going to be the Aberrants and the Courtiers. Aberrants are your actual nobility. The Courtiers are the lesser nobles below them. So when you see Aberrant, usually it means a vampire. Like an actual true-blooded vampire in some way. Courtier means a lesser court member. And their abilities, meaning what they can spend those noble deed points on, because it's not just a bubble effect, is different. Aberrants, if we look here at we'll go with Courtiers first. We'll start at the bottom like they do. Muster Guard. Courtiers are perceived as ranking officers who possess the charisma to rally wavering troops. Courtiers can spend noble deed points, and for every 1 they spend, they can add 1 serf back to... let's see, target a noble deed point. Yeah, you can turn 1 slain model if it's a serf, or you can spend 2 noble deed points to return a knight. Remember I said there's 2 branches of infantry. Serfs and knights make up the... there's 3 branches. Serfs, knights, monsters. That's kind of where it goes. So, you just get a sense of how you can spend those things. Courtiers restore models to units. Aberrants, as we'll see next, return dead units. So they are just 2 different levers completely, but you like to have them together, right? Because the Aberrant ability is summon loyal subjects. Let's see. Spend all that hero's noble deed points, so your Aberrant has to spend all 6. And you pick a unit that's been killed. Has to be serfs or knights. And you set up a replacement with half the number. Wholly within 6 inches of a battlefield edge. And more than 9 inches from enemy units. Now that's incredible because it's any battlefield edge. So like you can bring them back across the table. Like, you throw a knight unit in to die, bring 3 horrors back somewhere else. I'm using blocks of 6 horrors, so, you know, that's by half. But even if you sent out a minimum squad of 3, you get 2 back. Like, that's nothing to sneeze at on an objective if you don't have any troops there. So, I like it. And then once per turn, pick any number of friendly aberrants. They can all heal D3. So this is essentially your vampires can heal every turn. It's a pretty basic fantasy thing that they do. So pausing there, there's a unified hero ability of gaining noble deed points, and then there's a division in how they spend them. Adding models, returning units. Okay. Battle formations. We've got our 4 here like everybody else does. Excuse me, I have hiccups all morning. Give me 1 second, get some water. Okay. First one, Cannibal Court. Once per turn, at the end of any turn. Give 1 noble deed point to each friendly Flesh Eater Court hero, wholly outside friendly territory. Now, once per turn at the end of any turn. That could actually be very clutch. It essentially ensures that if you have a lot of lesser heroes that are not great at combat, as long as you're surging them up the board, they are accruing noble deeds somehow. It's an interesting one. I think there's other ways to get noble deed points. And sometimes you want to have a hero, at least, you know, 1 or 2 of your heroes you want to have somewhere near your backline, I would imagine, just to hold the fort. The next one is Lords of the Manor. Raise the banners. Each time a friendly unit uses an ability that returns any slain models to a friendly serfs or knight unit, add 1 to the number of slain models returned to that unit. Now this, to me, is the no-brainer. Maybe competitive people will disagree. I look at the way the knight units are, and how many ways there are to get models back into this, because there's not just noble deeds, there's a bunch of spells and prayers and other model effects that have nothing to do with spell or prayers. And then there's just rally. You can just rally better. Like, and so all of that, the idea of you create these units of, like, say 6 horrors. Again, I'm going with horrors as the knight option just because in my mind that's what I'm using. I have a lot of horrors. You have this group that if you can't kill 24 wounds worth of them, right, destroy the entire reinforced unit, I'm going to be able to get, like, a good portion of them back, certainly enough to hurt you. And the idea is, how many of those units can you fully destroy a turn? And also deal with all the other crap that I have on the board. So I like that. It's a rubber band effect, but I think it's cool. Yeah, I'm real excited for that. The next one we saw before in the preview is Ghoul Patrol, which I would say don't sleep on. This is the one where if you have when you're choosing to alternate fight abilities, if you use 1 Crypt Ghoul unit, you can pick 2 of them instead of 1, so long as neither of them has Strike Last. It's written funny, but that's kind of how I understand it. You know, it depends on what you're trying to do with the ghouls. There are some ways to crank them up, but I mean, they're meant to be chaff. There's nothing that makes them like... It's not like Plague Bearers used to be, where if you just brought them base, they were kind of meh. But if you crank them up to 11 with all the Nurgle buffs, then you're like, it's this super gross unit. I don't quite feel that way. We'll get into it, but I could be wrong. And the last one here is Royal Menagerie. Meat for the Beast. Pick a friendly Flesh Eater Court's monster to be the target. Roll a die on a 3-up. The target has strike first for the rest of the turn. I will be honest, that is the only one of these that does not sound interesting to me whatsoever. Like, because of the freedom when it comes to army building in this current edition that we're moving into, I understand the challenge of how do you articulate Gristlegore idea army, which is a monster heavy thing, lots of zombie dragons, terrorgeists, that kind of stuff. And this doesn't do it for me. On a 3-up, like, first of all, I don't like army abilities Unless it's like giving you a ward and that's what you're rolling for, the idea of having a random, value to see if your whole army ability works, that's not really my jam. Because I think about the fact that, okay, if I took a bunch of dragons and terror guys, as much as I could fit into a list reasonably, okay, like in terms of keeping your drops under control, or if the plan is to just go wild with them. Those are the two pools of thought. Those things would be attacking, right? So, like, why wouldn't they benefit from any one of these other ones? Like, for example, if you had a bunch of dragons and exactly 2 units of ghouls, I still see more value in Ghoul Patrol than Royal Menagerie. I could be wrong. But, like, you know what I mean? Like, you could take all the big beasties. I think it's a trap to think because you're taking big beasts that the Royal Menagerie is the right choice, is what I'm trying to say. I think there's a lot of play. Even if the other ones don't add much, turn by turn, I still think they're overall going to add more to your army than anything else. So even if you brought Lords of the Manor to just keep refueling your chaff, right, so that your dragons can go around the side and attack them, I still think there's more value in that. But please, if you have other thoughts, this is the time. Please let me know in the comments or the chat. We move on now to heroic traits. Cruel Taskmaster. Each time a friendly unit wholly within 12 inches of this unit uses the rally command, you make 3 additional rally rolls of d6. Makes rally better. Increases your chance of getting a knight back. And if you get 1, you get 2 if you're Lords of the Manor. Just throwing that out there. That's pretty dang cool. Let's see. The Stormcast battle focused on the Extremist Chamber. The Lightning Echelon should have gotten the same meme. Yes, exactly. Oh, man. So that's generally my choice, because the games that I have been workshopping in the list that I've been tuning is this idea of, like, throwing multiple big punches, and unless your opponent can truly wipe one out, then you come back really hard with a specifically 2 to 3 units of horrors in my case. And then if you do destroy one of them, I'm just going to bring him back. Like, it's awesome. The next one here, Stronger in Madness. Add 2 to this unit's health characteristic. In addition, while it has 6 noble deeds, it has a ward of a 5-up. Which is really cool, and if you are going with that kind of Gristlegore list, I could see that. I keep calling it Gristlegore, but monster heavy, right? Make your monster bigger and beefier, and give them a chance, because they're going to rack up noble deeds really quickly. Even though the companion doesn't count, they can deliver the Aberant Ghoul King on top to rack up the points. And so they are one that I think is going to achieve this pretty well, so giving them a ward on top of additional wounds is not a bad choice if you want monster-heavy stuff. Savage Beyond Reason. While this unit has fewer than 6 noble deed points, its melee weapons have crit 2 hits. So if you roll a 6 to hit, it scores 2 instead of 1. While it has 6 noble deed points, this melee weapons have crit mortal. Now, Crit Mortal is an exceptionally powerful ability in this game. There's a lot of interesting reasons to take that one, especially when you think about the fact, man, there are just some good killy heroes. I love the Aberant Archregent. The Gore Warden can be very nimble around the board. That's brutal. So I don't know. In terms of like reflecting, when I look at like heroic traits, spells, all kind of stuff, it's just how much fun are these all to engage with versus just funneling down one. I think there's 3 out of 4 pretty good ones in the battle formations. One standout, one standout great one, Lords of the Manor, and then there's one dud, the Royal Menagerie. This, I kind of like them all, like depending on the kind of list you want to build. None of them feel dumb. How about that? I think that's a great way to say it. None of them feel like choosing this makes you actively miss out on a fundamental part of the game. The Vargolf, is this Vargolf Stonks? It absolutely could be. When I first got this pack, I misread it because in the old battle tomes, I don't know if they're going to do this going forward, but in the battle tomes we had, it would have like Courtier artifacts and then Aberant artifacts, and so I initially read it as like, oh, it has to be an Aberant, which the Vargolf Courtier is a Courtier. So I skipped over that, and then I came back to it later, and I was like, that little guy, that little guy can just be on the board and just mess somebody's day up, and he can just go to the side, thrash something light, come back with his 6 noble deep points, barf it onto a unit, and giving them all +1 attack. I'm just like, Vargolf Courtier is sexy. I like this. Okay, Artifacts of Power. And this is one where I'm going to say up front, I think there's 2 out of the 3 are winners, and 1 very sad panda. Heart of a panda, if you can imagine. So, Charnel Vestments. If you're not a priest, you become a priest. If you're a wizard, meaning if you put it on an aberrant who can cast spells, you have to choose between casting spells and praying. You can't do both. That's all it is. Interestingly, though, if this unit is already a priest, add 1 to chanting rolls. So that little third thing in there. So there's actually quite a few options. This is generally my pick, and I'll share the list. I have built my 2K list, and then we'll go through the different directions that I've been thinking about it. But essentially, giving this to a courtier is awesome. And the reason is it just broadens how much access to the different lores that you have. Because outside of this, you have the cardinal, and he's awesome. But it's one of your 3 ways of getting noble deed points is prayers. So like, yeah, dude, let's do that. Let's play that game. And we got some killer ones. So I think, from what I read, there's not any keyword restrictions on artifacts. Yes, yeah, that was me just autofilling in stuff from the last edition. So anyway, that's why I generally pick Charnel Vestments. My lore for my army is we're the Hallowmorn, which is the knights who Sigmar hired to go defend his stashes of weapons all across Storm Vaults, as they're called. And they just kept getting lost and then devolved into Flesh Eater Courts, and they're just still a bunch of knights on that mission. So I like this because I like to imagine like the one bishop moving with knights. I think it's a fun idea. Or like a religious knight, like a paladin or something like that. The next item is the Grim Garland. This is my other one I think is pretty cool. Subtract 2 from the control scores of enemy units while they're within 12 inches of this unit. Now, that's important for a few reasons. I think control score is going to be exceptionally important in this game. And it's a thing that I see a lot of people struggling to wrap their head around. This idea that you can be on an objective with more guys and still have it pulled out from underneath you score-wise. It's just a different way of thinking. That's all. It'll just take some time. A few games, you'll be good. But, like, for example, if you have 2 units that each have control score 1... actually, that's a bad example. I'm trying to think of units where this would matter more. But if you have multiple units, this can depreciate this control score on all of them, is what I'm trying to say. So you could have a net negative of 4 to... 4 is kind of the high end. I think normally I see 2 units on an objective if there is more than 1. I don't know. It's an interesting one because the idea that you can then have all these highly mobile units, like the Morbeg Knights, I'm staring at mine across the wall, and then have this guy pounce in and then pull an objective is very compelling to me. I don't know if it's like the best, but I like it. It's a fun one. Also, fantastic choice. If you are going to go the big monster route, just by virtue of the size of their base, I think it becomes magnitudes better if you can project that bubble as big as you can, And the last one that I think is kind of a meh, is Heart of the Gargant, Heart of the Sad Panda. Once per battle, which is already like, you have to be pretty dang good to make me interested when I see once per battle. Effect, if this unit is in combat, add 1 to the attack's characteristic of its melee weapons for the rest of the turn. This also affects companion weapons. So the reason I don't like this is because it kind of just puts you in a weird circular loop of I use this effect to get +1 attack to all my weapons, including companions, so that I can have my Aberant punch somebody in the face, but only his weapons, not the companion weapons, count to earn noble deed points so that I can hopefully get 6 noble deed points to give +1 attack again. It just kind of feels like you're double stacking, whereas if it was like +1 to hit, I would actually, if it was like, I don't know, man, if it gave you crit mortals for 1 round, would it really be that bad? For 1 round, to ensure that you could, or not ensure, but just greatly increase your chances of just going from 0 to 6 like that, would it really be that bad? So that's my thing, is like, if it was meant to be a once per game increase and boost to get you to where you want to be with the noble deed points, I think there's probably more fun ways to do that. Anyway, so that's my thought on Heart of the Sad Panda. We have the spell lore here, the lore of madness. Let's see. I'm reading the chat here. I'm going to pause just to read the chat. Elect man, make the Vargolf a priest because it's funny. Lets them do something other than attack. It's true. And they really can. The reason I typically go with my Crypt Haunter, which is who I make my priest, is because I want him up in the face of the enemy, like giving buffs to the other horrors around. In general, though, if you're not going horror heavy, Vargolf's a solid choice. Let's see. Spell lore, deranged transformation. This is our unlimited one, so as long as you got attempts, you can just keep firing this one ready. Pick a friendly Flesh Eater Court unit wizard. And then you can pick a Flesh Eater Court infantry or cavalry unit wholly within 12. And you roll TD6, looking for a 6. Until the start of your next turn, add 2 to the target's move characteristic and add 1 to wound rolls for that target's combat attack. I would have settled for either one of those on an unlimited spell, but you gave me both. So, heck yeah. Honestly, if it was just +2 move characteristic, as someone who played like Bone Splitters and Beasts of Chaos and a bunch of those like aggressive move forward and charge armies, I'm pretty satisfied with that, actually. I dig it. +1 to wound is just a cherry. Miasma of Madness is the next spell. So pick a friendly wizard, an enemy unit that's within 18 inches of them. You're looking for a 5 on 2d6. And this is one where you play a mini game that I'm not too terribly fond of these. Roll 7 dice. If 2 or more dice have the same value, inflict immortal damage. If 3 or more have the same value, you do immortal damage, and in addition, subtract 1 from hit rolls for the target's attacks until the start of your next turn. And if 4 or more of those dice have the same value, in addition to those things, subtract 1 from wound rolls. Now, it's not that these are bad effects, is that, quite frankly, when I think about playing this in a noisy game hall, like at Adepticon, I do not want to explain this to my opponent. Nor do I want the... You know what I mean? Like, I don't want to stop everything and be like, listen, bro. Like, I enjoy the Nagash Hand of Dust or whatever it is, you know, where the dice game where you have to hide a die in your hands, because it takes half a second. Where is it? Right? I get that. Where is it? It's a binary choice. This is one that you're like, whoa, whoa, whoa. Why don't you go get some water? I'm going to take a handful of dice, and then I'm going to tell you as we're looking at this together what it means. And I'm like, that's just a recipe for miscommunication. And I just don't care for it. Effects are great, though. I don't know what the odds are of that. I'm sure there's calculators online. But honestly, to me, generally, it seems like the -1 wound is what you really want. But, all right. And the last one here is Charnel Feast. Pick a wizard. Cast the spell. Pick a visible enemy unit within 18 inches of them to be the target. It goes off on a 6. You inflict D3 mortal damage. So we already got a lightning bolt in our hands. I like that. Then you pick a friendly Flesh Eater Court's infantry unit within 6 inches of the target. For each damage point allocated by this ability, you return 1 slain model. 1 damage, 1 model. So if you do 2 damage, that would give you 2 models. Knights, like horrors, can also be infantry. So this is what I'm talking about. If you don't ice that brick of horrors, you get, let's even say it's in the middle, right? 2 I think is pretty reasonable, unless you're firing at something that specifically has a ward save. But I'm gonna target chaff. If the point is to add models, I'm gonna do that. So let's say on average you get 2. Then you get the Lords of the Manor, that's 3. You can rally. There's other Euros that have the ability to add stuff. So we haven't even gotten to the point where we have to waste your Courtier's Noble Deed points on restoring dudes, and I love it. I love it. Let's see. Then we have our prayer lore. So anyway, I like all of them. Sorry, we're wrapping up the spell lores. I like all of them. I'm not going to use the Miasma Badness, because if I have an open casting attempt, I would just rather do an endless spell. There's just nothing about this that makes me want to explain this to my opponent or keep track of it, because I then have to have some way of keeping track of the difference between Gory Visions and Drooling Stupor. I'm like, pass. Prayer lore. Our unlimited one is Blessed Feast. Pick a friendly Flesh Eater Quartz priest to chant the prayer, and then pick a visible enemy unit within 18 inches of them to be the target. Then make a chanting roll of d6. Until the start of your next turn, each time a model in the target unit is slain, heal 1 Flesh Eater Quartz unit in combat with the target. If the chanting roll is a 10-up, heal d3. So this is not a way to add models back, but it is a way to heal your multi-wound. Remember, cores we're going to talk about have 4 wounds each. But what I also love, let's say you are going to be a Terrorgeist and Zombie Dragon Monster Mash kind of a list. This is a thing where, just as Alekman said in the chat, give it to your Courtier, your Vargolf Courtier. He's going to run up, he's going to ping some damage, and now he's a priest, so he just needs to deliver this onto a unit that you know you are going to attack with your big monster, because now you can heal them. This is a great healing mechanic for like marking a unit that you want to kill and making sure at the end of that combat your big monster will have some measure of health, or at least some access to it throughout the combat phase, depending on how many units are involved and that kind of stuff. So it's very interesting to me. I thought that was awesome. The fact that it goes on this until the start of your next turn, there's a lot of opportunities now with things like countercharge. It's just ways to make out of sequence attacks that are fantastic. This one stands out to me is that if you want to play something with a lot of wounds and you're not focused on bringing dudes back necessarily, like, yeah, dude, jump on this. I like that. And, you know, honestly, and for those players, because I know there were a lot of Gristlegore players, because it was the hotness for a bit. But, like, I'm glad that that's an unlimited prayer, because you should be able to do it a whole bunch, right? Mark a whole bunch of things. Pick your targets, go after them. The next prayer is the Summer King's Favor. Pick a friendly Flesh Eater Quartz priest to chant it, and then you have to pick a hero within, one of your heroes, I'm sorry, within 18 inches of them, and then make a chanting roll of a d6. You're looking for a 5. Effect. Until the start of your next turn, each time an enemy model is slain by a combat attack made by the target, give the target 1 additional Noble Deed point after the fight has been resolved. Each time an enemy model is slain. So now you're getting Noble Deed points not just for the wounds you do, but also for the number of models you kill. That's important, because that can fluctuate. Right, that could be 8 wounds of 2 horrors, or it could be 8 individual ghouls, kind of a thing. If the chanting roll was a 10-up until the start of your next turn, each time an enemy model is slain by a combat attack made by the target, give all friendly Flesh Eater Court heroes wholly within 18 inches of the target 1 additional Noble Deed point after the fight ability has been resolved. This is an interesting one, because it feels to me like it could be a trap. Like, if you're worried about a smaller hero swinging above their weight class to be able to achieve 6 noble deed points, this is an interesting way to hopefully speed those guys up. You just have to kill, like, you know, if you have your... They don't have like the basic courtier anymore, but now it's the headsman with the axe. He's your ghoul on foot hero. Throw him into a combat, and now that it's cranked up to how many models he kills in addition to wounds, it's more likely he'll get to 6. That's great. If it's like something like a zombie dragon or whatever, I just don't think that they're going to have a lot of trouble, unless you just get like swamped or overwhelmed or out of place or something like that. My thing that I'm curious about that I have to see played out is, I think if people want to do this, it's smarter to lean into the 10 plus, bank it until you can magnify that effect, which sounds awesome for monster heavy lists. I would just have to see it. I don't know. This is one of those ones I'm like, okay, so he achieves something. He cranks up to 6 noble deed points. Now everyone around him has +1 attack, but then there's a greater bubble than that that gives all the heroes the noble deed point. What does that look like in terms of how many I'm racking up? I don't know. Remains to be seen. I'm curious. The last one here is Eternal Conviction. Pick a priest. Pick a friendly Flesh Eater Court units wholly within 18. You're looking for a 5. And it gives them a 5-up ward. If the chanting roll was a 10-up, sorry, this is just for one turn. Give them a 5-up ward for a turn. If it's a 10-up, you can pick 2 units to do the same thing. So just pick another. So cool. I mean, that could certainly be one worth, like, if you do the counter prayer, to have that kind of saved up, and then on your turn, then you do it. Hopefully you achieve 10. It'd be really cool to be able to drop that twofer. I don't know. Let's see. Manifestation lore. I'm just going to go through these really quickly. This is just for summoning our endless spells. It's just the actual mechanisms. 5, 6, and 7 all seem pretty doable. The Chalice is looking for 6s. The Cadaverous Barricade is 5, and the Corpse Mirror Stampede is a 7. I understand that Nagash's War Scroll is here. I also don't know why. I just feel like if you're playing these guys, you want Usherin as your centerpiece, big bad boy. I honestly didn't even spend much time looking at this. I know that he's a fantastic spellcaster. I just don't really care. So I'm going to pass on Gash here. Usherin. Very interesting. And I have to say, I'm just going to point this out. In terms of centerpiece models for a faction, from what I've seen in the Order books, the Chaos, and then the Undead ones, he is my favorite when it comes to having a character that has an immense presence within the army without overshadowing it. We were talking about this in my Discord about like how Teclis is the Lumineth Realm Lords to many of those players. Like, the two are inextricable. Anytime you address a balancing issue with Lumineth, Teclis is such an overwhelming part of that conversation that it's just difficult. And so with this, the idea, as I was explaining to people, is and that was from Lumineth players in the group, because I don't play them, I don't know. But for this, I felt like Usherin is fantastic because I build most of my list without him. I own him. I'm excited to start building lists with him. He does have a bunch of abilities, but I don't feel like I'm missing out on what it means to play Flesh Eater Courts by not taking him. I don't feel like there's such vital synergies that the game becomes unfun. You know what I mean? So I just wanted to throw, I thought that was great. We saw his War Scroll on Warcom, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it. But essentially, Flesh Eater Courts in the last edition had this ability where you would pick one delusion, and then Usherin would let you pick a second one, right? So you could be double the crazy. And they did away with that first layer of picking a delusion. Now it's just battle formations. They might come back, I have no idea. But Usherin continues that by allowing you to choose once per turn, what's everyone crazy about this round? And so that's how you gain access, sorry, to that second layer of army-wide abilities. So, we can we can talk about him if anybody has any questions, but he is just a big, nasty, mean wrecking ball. He's great at everything, and he's, I think, 600 and something points. He's a chunky price. He's kind of like Nagash in the sense of, well, not as much, I don't think, anymore, but when you have those big models that take up an immense amount of points, when something gets past 500 points, you have to stop and be like, okay, am I going to build the list around this thing? Right? I feel like Usherin is nice because he's at this level where you can build fun modules and Flesh Eater Courts for 400 or 500 points, so you can kind of change things around him and not have it feel so monotone. Whereas Archaon is 890. There's not a lot of wiggle room, right? You need dudes on the table. How much space for creativity do you actually have? I don't know. We'll see. I loathe Textless for the exact reason you described. 470. Oh, is he 470? I didn't know that. I thought he was, maybe I was doing it backwards. And thinking I had 670-ish points, but actually it's the other way around. Okay. Anyway, so I like him a lot. We're going to keep going. Terrorgeist on, excuse me. Ghoul King on a Terrorgeist. 12-inch move, 16 health, 4 up save, and 5 control. 5 control with the ability to give your opponent a -2 to all of their things with the Grim Garland. This dude's just gonna sit on an objective. I love it. Death Shriek, and this is, I'm gonna skip over the Terrorgeist because all of their profiles are pretty much baked into these as mounts. So the Death Shriek is a 10-inch gun. It shoots in combat, which makes sense. Of course, it's companion. You only roll 1 die. 4 to hit, 2 to wound, which is a pretty common thing for those really, really big attacks now. Rend of 2, damage D6. So that's nasty. Let's see. Oh, and that doesn't deteriorate at all anymore. Okay, I was looking ahead at the different abilities. He's also got the Terrorgeist Fanged Maw. 3 attacks, 4s and 2s, 2 rend, d6 damage again. Same stat line, and its companion again. And also the Talons. 6 attacks, 4s to hit, 2s to wound, 1 rend, 2 damage. As far as the other abilities that enhance that or whatever, he has the Gaping Maw, which is each time an attack is made with the Fanged Maw, if you score a critical hit, it inflicts 6 mortal damage on the target and the sequence ends. So it's not crit mortals, because crit mortals would make it d6 mortal wounds. It is a flat 6, which is great. That's why it has to have its own thing and not say crit or whatever. That's a passive ability, so whenever that happens. And then they also have a once per turn per army in any combat phase. So you or your opponents pick an enemy hero in combat with this unit to be the target. I don't know, 3 up. The Fanged Maw attacks score a critical hit on a 5 up. So he wants to literally bite the head off of the enemy. I like that a lot. Love it, love it. But the base stat line of a Ghoul King that we're going to see for their attacks, I skipped over these. Gory Talon and Fangs, we'll see this a lot on the Aberrants. 5 attacks. I'm so sorry, folks. Dry throat, terrible all of a sudden. 5 attacks, 3s to hit, 3s to wound, 1 rend, and 2 damage. So as you can see, that prayer that gives, a hero, was it crit, 2 hits when you have less than 6 noble deed points, and then crit mortals when you do. That's what I'm talking about. That, in addition to the rest of these super nasty things on this beast, means, to me, monster riding heroes are a thing, and I love it. And they should be. Scroll down here to the zombie dragon. I'm going to skip over anything that's the same. For example, all their base stat lines 12, 16, right? At the same? Yeah, 12, 16 on a 4-up save, 5 control. They have Pestilential Breath, which is a 10-inch range thing. D6 attacks. 2s to hit, 4s to wound, 1 rend, 3 damage. That is a brutal thing. 2s and 4s. Okay, 3 damage is gross. He also has the Ghoul King's Gory Talons and Fangs. This guy has the Draconic Maw. 3 attacks, 4s and 2s. 2 rend and 3 damage. And also his Draconic Claws. 7 attacks, 4s to hit, 2s to wound, 1 rend and 2 damage. As far as his abilities go, Draconic Terror is in the once per turn in any combat phase. Pick an enemy unit in combat with this target. Roll a dice. If it exceeds the target's control characteristic, the target cannot use commands for the rest of the turn. That could be important. Absolutely. I think it matters army to army. Because I feel like not all of them lean on commands equally, but it's good to have. It's a rampage ability, so that's cool. The other passive one is Monstrous Hunger. While they're wholly within 12 inches of this unit, friendly, non-hero Flesh Eater Court monsters can use charge abilities even if they run in the same turn. So, if you are going to bring your classic Gristlegore monster list, you're going to want this guy as your, not necessarily as your leader, but want him in your list at some point because he's going to allow you to yeet your dragons so far across the board. He's fantastic. Wizard 1. Both Aberrants are Wizard 1. Got a 6-up ward. Yeah, he's cool. What I like about him is he's cool and for a purpose. You know what I mean? Like, I think the Terrorgeist is about heroes who want to get in there and mix it up. This is an army support hero, and I like that a lot. Let's see. We have Grand Justice Gourmain. 6-inch move, 5 health, 2 control, and a 5-up save. I'm going to say his melee weapon is irrelevant because I don't want him in combat. That's how I am with all my archer units too. What's the weapon profile on this archer's bladed dagger? Irrelevant. Pick a visible friendly enemy unit to be the target. So there's no range. He's just got to see him, which means if you put him on his little stand, the Flesh Eater Court throne, he's going to see just about everything. Pick a dice on a 3-up. Oh, sorry, yeah, so you're picking a unit and you're doing these. Effect. Roll a dice on a 3-up, pick one of the following effects to apply to that enemy unit until the next turn. So these are the judgments you pass down. One of them, add 1 to wound rolls for combat attacks that target that unit. That's sexy. The next one, a friendly non-monster Flesh Eater Court unit can use a charge ability, even if it used a run ability in the same turn, but if they do so, they have to end the move within ½ inch of that target. That's awesome. That's awesome. Like, imagine being able to throw your Crypt Ghouls, like, turn 1, put him on the throne, right? Because you do all your hero abilities whenever you want. Put him on the throne. He can now see an enemy unit in the front line. Point at it and be like, whoever points at that gets run in charge. You then activate your ghouls, spend the command point to make them auto-run 6. They've now gone up there, and they can charge. There's a prayer in there that gives you +2 to your movement and +1 to your wound. Like, there's just ways to throw things at your opponent, and I like that a lot. Grievous Insult to the Court is the next option. While the target is in combat with a friendly Aberant, so one of your heroes, add 1 to hit rolls for attacks made by Flesh Eater Courts that target that unit. This is an interesting one because it's not one that I would default pick. However, I thought about this more. It is a really cool tool to have in the tool belt, because if you have a hero that just gets swamped and there's just a really messy brawl in the center of the table, I don't know. I could see it. I could see being able to like pick a unit and just being everyone's like, screw that guy. I like that a lot, especially if you do kind of come at the game with the plan of like hyper targeting a single what needs to be destroyed this round. If you're that kind of person, being able to pick a thing, and if you know your hero is going to be delivered to it, that's pretty good. Stopping in during quick Zoom work to say hi, pipe. Can't wait to throw it. Oh, nice. I'm so happy for you, Corey. Thank you so much for popping in and saying hi. I appreciate it, buddy. Anyway, and then the last one here is Regicide. If the target destroyed a friendly Aberant this battle, add 1 to the damage characteristic of melee weapons used by friendly Flesh Eater Court units to be the target. So, anyone who kills your leader, or one of your leaders, you get to clap back real hard. Which in my mind is like, okay, so I'm going to throw a zombie dragon at Archaon. He's much cheaper than Archaon. How many combat fights do I have? He's a hero, so I can use the crit on a 5-up Fanged Maw thing. I have a couple ways of healing him. Not great ways, but a couple. And this idea that, like, if you kill him, whatever else in my list just gets way better at killing this super expensive model with however many wounds he has left on it. It sounds awesome. Again, not a thing that I would always use, but it's a good tool in your pocket to be like, I dare you. I dare you to take out something like one of my heroes, and it could be just a crappy Aberant, right? A Flesh Eater Ghoul King on foot is just a cheap little guy. If you kill an Aberant, I dare you to with something special. Because if you do, I'm going to clap back real hard. I like that. That's a cool little thing in the tool belt. Let's see. Next is the Gore Warden. He's got the profile of an Aberant we've been talking about. 5 attacks, 3s, 1 rend, 2 damage. Doesn't change a whole lot. His notable thing is his new model, his fascination for keys, and his wings, because he has a 12-inch move, 7 health, 5-up save, 2 control. And really why you take him, he has also a Wizard 1. It's important to know. He has the ability Royal Hunting Party. If this unit is not in combat, you can pick up to 2 friendly Crypt Flayers or Morbeg Knight units that are not in combat and wholly within 12 inches of this to be the targets. You pick them all up, and then set him up on the battlefield more than 9 inches from enemy units. Then, so you set him up, and then you set the 2 units up one at a time, wholly within 12 of him and more than 9 from enemy. So, I have one of these and a set of Morbeg Knights in my army, and their entire purpose is just to capitalize on my opponent's terrible mistakes. If you're going to broadcast, you're going to go for the battle tactic where you have to have somebody with near my control zone or whatever. I'm going to try to teleport him to charge. If you have to have people in a zone or near an objective, I want these guys to be able to just pop in and get to it. So I think they're cool for that reason alone. Being able to throw a spellcaster wherever you want on the board, it's pretty cool. Won't lie. There's a few ways to make these guys move a little extra. That's super sweet. I like him. Again, he's a nice to have, not a must have. You can easily just build an army that doesn't include him. The Marrow Scroll Herald. Herald has a 6-inch move, 5 health, 2 control, 5 up. He is a courtier, so he's the one who restores models rather than bringing back units. My favorite ability of his is Don't Shoot the Messenger. While he is not in combat and is wholly within combat ranges of 3 or more other Flesh Eater Court infantry models, he's not visible. He's just not visible, which means you can't shoot at him, you can't do prayers at him, you can't spellcast him, nobody sees him. That's like the best. that is actually the best kind of whatever disguise. I don't know if his camo is just like looking like a dumpy Crypt Ghoul or something like that. He just kind of has like one of the Nixon masks on the top of his head. He just kind of blends in a little bit. I don't know. But yeah. Also, but his big ability at the Herald part of him, once per turn, per army in any charge phase. Pick an enemy unit in combat with this unit to be the target. So what that tells me is his passive ability of Don't Shoot the Messenger is literally just a means to deliver him somewhere. So you get him in combat with somebody, roll a die on a 3-up. You can pick Attack the Apostate. Flesh Eater Court units in combat with the target have strike first for the rest of the turn. Okay, so you have to be in combat with the Herald, and then somebody else in combat with him gets strike first. That's cool. Second one is Welcome the Disciple. The target has the infected keyword for the rest of the battle. Each time your opponent declares a command, spell ability, or prayer ability for an infected unit, roll a dice. On a 5-up, if they declared a command, the command has no effect, but it still counts as being spent. And if they declare a spell or a prayer, it fails. I don't really care, if I'm totally honest with you. I like the first one. Being able to give people strike first is actually quite good. When I think about my big horror brick that I want to make that has a Courtier Haunter, 2 bricks of Crypt Horrors, like this is a nice addition. The idea that in the charge phase, having the option to be able to give strike first to say my Haunter, and then immediately when he's done, triggering the horrors. That's nice. That's cool. Not that I'm going to break my back to make it happen, but you know, it's an option. Next, we got Morbeg Knights. 12-inch move, 4 health each, 1 control, and a 4-up save. They have the Grizzly Lance, 2 attacks, 3s to hit, 4s to wound, 1 rend, 1 damage, charge plus 1 damage. So they like jumping in. I like that. Their mounted are called Night Shriekers. They're like like a subspecies of Terrorgeist, essentially. Their claws and teeth are 3 attacks, 4s to hit, 3s to wound, 1 rend, 2 damage, and they are companion, of course. Shrieking Charge. Any charge phase. If this unit charged this phase, so that would be even if you used counter charge in your opponent's charge phase, anytime it charges, roll a d3, and a 2-up, inflict that many mortal wounds. And then passive ability is Predator's Pounce. This unit can use charge abilities even if it used retreat abilities in the same turn. In addition, it doesn't suffer any mortal damage for retreating. So these guys, if you're not constantly ping-ponging them into combat, what are you doing? Kind of a thing. I like them a bit. For the record, I'm going to pause here. So I'm going to Holy Havoc in November, and I'm very excited about that. I am bringing my Hallowmorn Flesh Eater Courts, which has a focus on horrors. But my partner, because it's a partners event, is Dan Bears from Cubic Shenanigans. And we co-host the Emperor Protects together about Horse Heresy stuff. And he is bringing his Flesh Eater Courts, and he has a huge emphasis on Morbeg Knights. So we're going to be like 2 knightly orders that are unifying for a crusade together. So I'm very excited about that. He's stoked about these things. I think he was kind of hoping for a little bit more from them stat line wise. But I'm like, man, they're just ghouls on bats. They're not like Blood Warriors on Juggernauts, where like if you take the individual warrior off the Juggernaut, he still fights like a Stormcast, right? I mean, basically that's what Blood Warriors are. Whereas like this is like, I mean, he's still just a little dude. He's still just a little emaciated naked guy. I don't know what you expected from him. Next up is Crypt Guard. These are your elite infantry. One thing I should note is the Morbeg Knights. They have the Knight keyword. That's important because they're the only thing that has a ghoul that has the Knight keyword, but it's because obviously they're riding mounts. But worth noting, because they are not infantry when it comes to those prayers that let you add stuff back to an infantry unit. Which is why horrors are better. Crypt Guard moves 6 inches. They have 1 health, 1 control, and a 6-up save. They also have a 6-up ward. They come with cursed weapons. 3 attacks each, 4 to hit, 4 to wound, 1 rend, and 1 damage. Alright. Reaction. You declared a fight ability for this unit. If any damage points were inflicted by attacks made part of that fight ability are allocated to an enemy unit, those enemy units cannot use commands until the start of your next turn. I like it. I think it matters more army to army because it matters on where your synergies are coming from, but I could see it being very important. And they also have a passive. While there are any Flesh Eater Court heroes, so it's courtiers or aberrants, wholly within this unit's combat range, both this unit and that hero have a ward of a 5-up instead of a 6. It used to be that they had a static 5, and then if a hero was near them, they gave the hero the +1 to their ward, making it a 5-up. And so in that math, it was like, wow, your Crypt Guard are really, really brave. I want to have my hero hide next to his entourage. And now it's the other way around, where it's like the Crypt Guard are desperately seeking a hero. Make us better! Which is, I'm fine with it being a mutual passive thing. It kind of feels like a long way to get the same effect, but whatever. Next is the one we've been talking about a lot in the chat, is the Vargulf Courtier. This is, of course, a Courtier hero. Have a 6-up ward on their own. Highly independent and super gross. They move 10 inches, have 8 health, and 2 control, and a 5-up save. The only thing that's hero-wise relevant is that he seems like he would be a vampire monster, but he does not get the Aberant heal every turn thing. So that's just the only thing to keep in mind. His weapons are his immense claws, 7 attacks, 4s to hit, 3s to wound, 1 rend, 2 damage. They have anti-infantry +1 rend. So he's a man opener. Then he also has the dagger-like fangs, which is 1 attack, 3s to hit, 2s to wound, 2 rend, and 3 damage. And this also has anti-infantry +1 rend. So yes, as Velas said, what a beautiful looking paladin. Agreed. So for his abilities, so that's just, he's hyper mobile. He doesn't require any kind of buffs to make him good at killing things. Send him into a chaff unit or a flanking fort, something, and then he can just crack them open like a Bud Light. His passive ability is this unit can pass across terrain as if it had fly. I dig it. Again, helps him skirt around the board and just pick away targets he wants. And then also at the end of any turn, if any models were slain by this unit this turn, heal D6 to this unit, and this unit can immediately use the retreat ability as if it were your movement phase without any mortal damage being suffered. So he truly is this idea of like, I'm going to yo-yo him across the enemy chaff line. Hopefully he doesn't get shot, right? That's always a possibility. You could throw the, wasn't there an artifact that makes him, no, I guess that wasn't, I'm thinking of something else for Spearhead. But like, there's ways to keep him safe. Marginally. I don't know. But like, you want to have him basically chip away and accrue those noble deed points, because then he can become a highly mobile banner, if you think about that in terms of like, he's just a point of synergy that can move across quickly. Where do you need that +1? Where do you need the noble deed points to bring somebody back to life? You know, in terms of resurrecting a unit. It's all kinds of cool stuff. He's a good guy. He's a good guy. Make him a priest with the charnel vestments. That's sexy. Now you're taking that prayer lore anywhere in the battlefield with this kind of mobility. You gotta love him. Aberant Cardinal, 6-inch move, 6-up save, 5 health, and 2 control. He has the Cursed Crozier. He has a 3 attacks, 4s to hit, 3s to wound, no rend, D3 damage. I believe that this profile is the edition's new old man staff stat line, which is just, we give it to all the old sorcerers who shouldn't be in combat anyway. It's basically the GW equivalent of Ipsum Lorem filler. This generic hero fight profile. Anyway, he has an ability in the hero phase, Rousing Oration. Pick a friendly Flesh Eater Courts hero, wholly within 12, roll a D3 on a 2-up, give the target a number of noble deed points equal to the roll. So this used to be a command ability that we could use, but it was dependent on the number of units around you, and you would roll that many dice, try to fish for 5s. I like this more in terms of how regular it is. Yeah, I don't know. I have one on my list. I think it's interesting. But yeah. Bargolf can only fly over terrain, not models, so it still gets blocked by chaff. But chaff is the target! That's what I mean. That's really what I mean. Is like, he can position to be able to then do the yo-yo thing with preferably infantry chaff to get those 6, and then he has a lot of options open. So, but yeah, he exists pretty much for that ability. Also, without the charnel vestments, he is your only base access, I believe. He's the only priest. Someone correct me if I'm wrong, if I overlooked that somewhere else, but next is the Royal Decapitator. 6-inch move, 5 health, 5 up save, 2 control. This is our basic ghouly boy courtier, as I talked about before. 3 attacks, 4s to hit, 3s to wound, 2 rend, and 3 damage, because he has the big can opener head. Reaction, you declared a fight ability. Pick a friendly serfs unit that has not used a fight ability and is within this unit's combat range to be the target. The target can be picked to use a fight ability immediately after the fight ability has been used. Basically, when he attacks, you get to break the normal sequence of you pick an attack, I pick an attack, whatever, in the fight phase, and kind of let a set of ghouls fight immediately. This is really cool, because Ghoul Patrol exists, so you could have him go fight. You're hoping that he tops off to 6 noble deeds at some point, and if he does that, then the unit next to him that he gets to trigger will fight, and when you activate another a Crypt Ghoul unit to fight, provided that they don't have Strike Last, then another one can immediately fight. Someone correct me if I'm wrong about that, but I don't see anything that limits, provided nobody has Strike Last, nothing that limits that chain of 3 attacks that will hopefully, I don't know, hopefully in the hero phase you've targeted them with some kind of either prayer, or that your target has some kind of prayer to give you either health back or restore models or whatever it is. I think there's a lot there. With that ability, not necessarily on him, not the biggest Crypt Ghoul fan, but it's there. Near end of a turn, off with their head, pick an enemy infantry hero that has had any damage points allocated to it this turn. Roll a dice on a 5-up. It's just automatically destroyed. I will continue my criticism from the last book that we had. That is, if a model is destroyed with this ability, this hero immediately gains up to 6 noble deed points. It's the coolest thing. Just give it to him. Because it's not going to come up often, but when it does, can you imagine how epic that feels if someone just like just yaws off an enemy's head, and then all the ghouls are like, wow, and then, you know, you get your 6 noble deeds. That's pretty awesome. That was my criticism of him before, and it stands. Next up is actually my favorite hero, and who I'm generally using as my general. 6-inch move. This is the Aberant Archregent. 6-inch move, 6 health, 5 up save, and 2 control. He's got the gory talons and fangs like everybody else. But his points cost come from his abilities, because he's awesome. He just is. Carrion Call. This is in your hero phase. Make a casting roll of 2d6. The first friendly Flesh Eater Courts unit to be set up in the following movement phase can immediately move d6 inches. That unit cannot move into combat during any part of that move. Okay. So let's think about that for a second. That's one whole thing that immediately lends a lot of value to the Gore Warden, because now he can teleport and move. But remember, it's the first, the first friendly Flesh Eater Courts unit, and the way it's articulated with the Gore Warden's teleportation is that he has to be deployed first, and then everybody else goes. So it would just be the Gore Warden who gets that particular bonus, but remember, that's not your only way to get troops on the table. You can also bring them back to life. So if you know that you're going to spend your stack of noble deed points on bringing something back to life, you bring them back on the board within 6 inches of the table edge, and they get an additional d6 inches of movement. Depending on the game mode, they could be tapping an objective. They could be within a great charge range of your opponent. Like, there's just a lot of things at play with that, and I like that. What's also nice is that you don't have to do it, right? Like, he has two, right? He's a wizard too. One of the only ones we have. So it's a spell option, and when you need it, it's awesome. If you don't, it's just good to have a wizard too. Right. But his other ability is why I use him, which is Countless Servants. Pick a friendly serfs or knights unit wholly within 12 inches of this unit and roll a die on a 3-up. The target serfs unit returns 3 slain models, and if you targeted a knight unit, you return 1 slain model. But remember, we're playing Lords of the Manor, so you actually get 2 knights if you're playing Crypt Horrors, or 4 if you're doing ghouls, Crypt Guard, whatever. Like, that's what I'm talking about, man. You get this just for rolling a die on a 3-up, in addition to rally, in addition to all the spells and the prayers, and it's just a lot. It's a lot of bringing stuff back, and I'm here for it. But really, I like him because he blends the utility of a few different things. So, for example, that dichotomy I talked about before of Aberrant, bring units back to life. Courtiers, add models. Here's an example of someone doing both. Now, provided it's imperfect, it's only on a 3-up, but also he doesn't have to spend noble deed points to do it, to bring models back to an existing unit. So I'm like, that's dead sexy. That's pretty good. I like him. Next up is his baser counterpart, the Aberant Ghoul King. Again, gory talons and fangs. Pretty much got the same stat line, but he is a wizard 1. And his abilities, any combat phase, Code of Honor. Pick an enemy hero in combat with this unit to be the target. For the rest of the turn, add 1 to the damage characteristic of this unit's melee weapons, but it has to target that hero. So, he wants to challenge another enemy hero. I'm here for it. Then there is Unnatural Speed. If this unit charged in this phase, it has the Strike First effect for the rest of the turn. Why didn't you just give that to the Royal Menagerie? Why make them roll on a 3-up? Why not just have it be Terrorgeists are cool, and if they charged, they get Strike First? Okay, that's all. That's just my criticism. You already wrote the thing. It's cool. It's cool on a little guy. It'd be way cooler on a big guy. They also don't have any way of getting bonuses to avoid damage if they retreat out of combat, so like those charges need to matter. I don't know. Why the D3? What are we doing? And now we're going to start going into some more of the minor heroes. We talked about a few of them. The Crypt Infernal Courtier is essentially your small hero that can fly. He is useful for that reason alone. And he has an ability called Mind-Shattering Cacophony. If any enemy models were slain by this unit's piercing death streak, that's its ranged attack, but it can shoot in combat, so if it just got killed by anything, this turn, for the rest of the turn, add 1 to the damage characteristic of ranged weapons used by friendly Crypt Flayers units wholly within 12. This is important because there's a weird difference between the way that Flayers play in this faction and everything else. The other stuff, like when it comes to the Decapitator, his special ability for his units, meaning serfs, is that when he attacks, another serf unit gets to attack. The Crypt Haunter that we'll see, who is the Horror's special hero, when he attacks, a Crypt Horror unit gets to attack. This is the only one of the courtiers that are specific to a type that when they attack, it modifies a stat rather than letting somebody else immediately activate, which means they have a different kind of utility. And I think we're going to see flare lists do a big return because of it. +1 to damage, it's just... there is no weapon in this game that does not benefit from +1 damage, right? It's just... Nothing gets less sexy when it has more damage. To that end, his Piercing Death Streak has a range 10 attack, so he can actually tag people after teleporting and stuff like that. Or being added to the battlefield, that kind of thing is what I meant. 4 attacks, 4s to hit, 3s to wound, 2 rend, D3 damage, and shooting combat. Skewering Claws, this is melee. They're not great. 5s to hit. Oh, sorry, 5 attacks. 4s to hit, 3s to wound, 1 rend, 2 damage. He's a really good one. And he's another option for Charnel Vestments, because you can then, with his speed of 12, and he can fly, he can deliver the prayers where you want them to be on the board. Next is the Haunter, who I talked about before. I already talked about his Nightly Exemplar ability. He attacks, pick a horror unit, they now get to go. He also, just like a full grown-up vampire boy, gets to heal D3 every hero face, so that's cool. I like him for that. He's got a 7-inch move, 6 health, 5 up save, and a 2 control, and there's really nothing special to him outside of that. I have just found in my playing, if I just try to throw a hero up to do damage to get noble D points, they die. But if I do stuff like this, where I have the hero go and a unit with him, the hero goes, racks up the noble deed points, and then immediately the unit then gets to activate. Even if I don't have the noble deed points, the unit then activating, typically, in most cases, will cripple whatever they're attacking enough so that my hero doesn't get murked. And that's really what it is. How can I get the noble deed points? And then I'm happy to pull the courtier back, because I want them to have the +1 attack bubble everywhere. So I don't see this so much as like this massive uptick in offensive capability, but I see it more as a defensive. It allows me to put the Haunter in a dangerous position, knowing I have an opportunity to make it far less dangerous. So that's kind of how I look at it. Other people can differ. Please let me know. Then there are the actual flares. 12-inch move, 4 health, 1 control. I'm just really going to get to their death scream, which is they're also screaming just like their courtier. Then in range, 4 attacks, 4s to hit, 3s to wound, 2 damage. I'm sorry, 2 rend, and 1 damage. But remember, if the courtier tagged that unit first, it's 2 damage. That's gross. And they can shoot in combat. Ew. Oh, actually, I didn't talk about the horror's stat line. I'm so sorry. Their weapon I like a lot, actually. Massive Bone Club and Rancid Talons. 5 attacks, 4s to hit, 3s to wound, 2 rend, and 3 damage. So, yeah. One thing I should add is if you do the Nightly Exemplar thing, where you have the Haunter go and then pick another horror unit next to him, for that specific attack, the horrors get +1 to their hit rolls. So that would actually make them hit much, much harder. Okay. So that was the Haunter Courtier. Now we're talking about the Crypt Horrors themselves. So this is the base guy. I have 2 units of 6 of these, and I think a unit of 3. But I'm going to crank those numbers up. Crypt Horrors. 7-inch move, 4 health, 1 control, and a 5-up save. Their weapons are the Club and Septic Talons. 4 attacks, 4s to hit, 3s to wound, there's no rend, and 2 damage. The ability they have, though, is Crit Auto Wound, which is not quite as good as Crit Mortal, but it's nice. Especially when your wound roll's a 3-up, right? For their passive ability, add 1 to the rend characteristic of this weapon if there's any friendly courtiers or aberrants wholly within 12 inches of this. So that's cool. I like that a lot. Again, I want to have my courtier there, so he's giving them fight out of sequence and +1 to hit. The Crypt horrors are then receiving +1 to their rend, and they also, kind of like vampires, can heal D3 in the hero phase. So not only am I topping them off regularly, but I'm adding models, hopefully. So anyway, that's the idea, is to just throw as many attacks like this. 4s to hit, so I'm going to say we can make this a few ways, right? You could just do all that attack. That'd be +1 to hit. Pretty simple. So that would make it 3s and 3s. -1 rend and 2 damage. That's great. You could also have the prayer on the enemy, whoever they're targeting, if you are the kind of player that like picks a specific target to delete each turn. If that's what you need to do to win the game, the prayer that like heals you back or adds models back to your unit is exceptional on these guys. They're just a thing you don't want to get stuck in with, and unless you can again wipe 24 wounds, or at least a lot of wounds, it's gross. Move on to Crypt Ghouls, the humble little guys. 6-inch move, 1 health, 6 up save, 1 control. They attack with their sharpened teeth, 2 attacks, 4s to hit, 4s to wound, no rend, 1 damage, and crit auto wound. They also have royal approval. If there's a hero, courtier, or aberrant within 12 inches, they get +1 to rend. They honestly seem more like dryads every edition. I like them though. What is it? They're units of 20, I think. So yeah, I'm here for it. I'm not going to cover, like I said, the Royal Dragon. There's just a few other things. I'll skip his profile. That's all the same. They have 12 inches of move, 14-inch health. Same attack stats. The only difference is that there's no one riding it. He can be set up in the sky. And so if this unit is high above in the sky, in a movement phase, you can set him up more than 9 inches from any enemies. And once per turn, Soaring Terror. If this unit charged this turn, roll a dice on a 3-up. This unit can move 2d6 and it can pass through combat ranges of enemies, but must end that move in combat. Then pick an enemy unit. This says passed across and inflict d3 mortal damage on that unit. So basically he can zoom over people. Okay. Edit. All right. It kind of seems like the rush forward or whatever ability where everyone looks at it and it's like, GW, I know you told me that this is going to be a chariot running through a unit, but really what this is going to look like is doing the Tokyo drift on my Griffhound chariot and backing out. And there's the Terrorgeist. And let's see. Has the exact same attacks. The Fanged Maw thing still hurts people on a 6-up, but he also gains Death Shriek. Pick an enemy infantry unit in combat to be the next target. Roll a dice for each model in the target unit. For each 6, inflict 1 mortal damage on the target. If 3 or more damage points are allocated to the target, subtract 1 from their hit rolls for the rest of the turn. So he has a nice debuff as he screams at people. There's the Beast Flayers. I don't know, I gotta talk about them too much. They're just essentially the elite infantry, Crypt Guard, that are really good at fighting monsters. And they can shut down rampages if that becomes a thing in your particular meta. We saw the Corpus Mare Stampede. I don't necessarily think that they're all that great. But I'm going to summon them every single game because my lore is I'm a bunch of knights who had to eat their horses, so summoning the horses back to life sounds pretty cool. That being said, I do see merit in its ability to rush to the back line. It can go over things and through stuff just to do some damage to supporting heroes. Cadaverous Barricade. Enemy units cannot use run or retreat abilities if they're within this thing's combat range. In addition, if an enemy unit is picked to use a move ability while it's within range, have its movement characteristic. This one, this really exemplifies to me why I'm happy that that we get all the manifestations in a lore rather than just having to buy them individually, because I would never pay points for this, but it is a nice to have depending on the board. If there is a bottleneck and you drop this there, that's mean. It's just no way around that. That's really stinking mean. So it's a nice to have. It's one that I'm going to keep in my pocket because I intend to play this lore for manifestations, mainly because I have the models and I haven't bought any others. But I want to find out what they're good at. And this seems like a highly dependent map one, but the ones where it matters, I think it's going to be everything. Also has the potential for a lot of fuel bats. Because remember, this is the one that costs, it's a 5. So I'm like, oh. And lastly is the Chalice of Usherin, which I'm pretty hot on, but a lot of folks seem pretty cool on it. They don't seem to dig it very much. You have, it doesn't move. It just plops wherever it is. Health 6, get a 6-up save. Each time a friendly model is slain, each time a model, friendly or enemy, that's important. Each time a model is slain within 12 inches of this manifestation, you give it 1 blood point to a maximum of 6. This is different than noble deed points. Now we got blood points. At the end of any turn, overflowing gore. Pick a friendly Flesh Eater Quartz unit wholly within 18 inches of this manifestation to be the target. Add the number of blood points this manifestation has to the target's control score for the rest of the turn. Then reset this manifestation's blood points to 0. I think that's awesome. There are many missions where you can put this in a point where it can give that bonus to units like... How am I trying to word this? I'm sorry, let me start over. It can be a meaningful asset to cover multiple objectives. Not in the same round, but like, let's say turn 1 you need to take objective 1. It can be there. You can add control score points to that. And then next turn, without having to move the spell, as the battle shifts forward, then you can then drop this on a unit that's contesting the next objective up. So I guess what I'm saying is, like, for not having to keep track of a whole lot of stuff, it seems like really good for like sniping an objective out from underneath your opponent, because I mean, the maximum is 6. 6 control score points is a lot. That's a lot. The only downside is you can't distribute it across. Like, it'd be really cool if you could pick 2 units and give like 3 here, 2 there, that kind of thing. But yeah, I don't know. I don't play Feck, but my issue is that I see that you not only need to plop it near an objective, but you also need to go through the effort of filling it, all for a bump of control score. Well, what I like is that it doesn't need to be near an objective. It just needs to be near a unit that's trying to go for an objective, which could be a lot of different things. Because your target isn't the objective, it's a unit in 18 inches. Which is a pretty big bubble. Which was my point, is like, you're not declaring what objective you're trying to steal, you're just putting it near the battlefield. You're giving a spell for it, and it can be banished, which wastes all your points. But we're not paying for it anymore. This is all free. So there's no points on the board. Oh, you mean all my blood points? I'm fine with that, actually. I don't know. I'm trying to think about it. Again, it's not one I'm in a rush to do. Like, if I see a Khorne army across from me, or Daughters of Cain, or something where I know that A, casting is not a massive part of their army plan, and B, it's gonna be a bloodbath, right? I feel that same way about most destruction armies. That's why they're so fun. It's gonna be a bloodbath. The biggest downside is that it's not wound suffered, it's models destroyed, so against Sons of Behemoth it it will never matter. It will never ever matter. So again, like a lot of these things, I like the utility, but you're just holding up a sign that says banish me, please. That's fine. That's fine. I would much rather you spend your time reading that sign and not the other things that I have going on, right? This is a set and forget, which I like. I'm going to set this on the table, and probably turn one it won't matter. And so your opponent probably wants to spend their time getting their buffs out, right? Who wants to waste a cast dispelling this in the first turn? But beyond that, I would rather have you spend your turn getting rid of this. I don't care. I could easily see turn 1 taking my Aberant Archregent, who has 2 casts, doing, let's see, one of them being the unlimited one that lets you speed a unit up, the other one being trying to set this out near a place where I don't really want to fight. Like, I'll keep this in my backfield where it's not going to get unbound, with a unit of Crypt Guard to hold an objective. That way, if the Crypt Guard die, whatever's left will get the +6 control score. So it just helps me keep objectives in the backline, which I do like. There's a few ways to use it. I'm trying to think about that now. I don't mind keeping it in the backfield, and that way if your opponent has any kind of shenanigans that let them deploy a unit in your backfield and charge a weaker unit, a ranged thing, or whatever. Range thing, there's no range stuff. Let's say they charge one of my Crypt Guard, who I would usually have kind of zoning out of space. Alright? Unless you kill him outright, I still have a unit there that I can throw the command points, or the control score back on. I think that's cool. Not always, but cool when it comes up. And then there is the throne. The big throne itself. Shocker, it doesn't move, but it does have 10 health. So you can snipe this thing away. I'm going to sum up a bunch of this because it's a lot of wordy text. Basically, in your hero phase, if a hero is standing next to it, you can choose that hero to be your steward. The steward stands on top of the throne, and they are the throne are now one singular entity. The big thing here is that if you're standing on the throne, you give D3 noble deeds points to that steward. So essentially, someone goes up there, they get D3, have them cast their spells, their prayers, whatever they're going to do, and you're hopefully, it gets you closer to that 6 noble deed points a lot quicker. And then I'm not going to talk about the spearhead stuff right now. I'm going to do a dedicated spearhead video for these guys, but that is the faction. So, let me, on a different screen here, pardon, let me pull up my list that I have been working on. And forgive the messiness of this doc, I've just been working out of it for a bit. I made my own little points calculator stuff to keep it simple. So this section up here is the main part. It's the 2K list, so we're going to ignore everything below that. This is a few ideas for my 1K with Dan. And this switched the Archregent and the Cardinal spots. That's the only difference. I just put them there for points tallying. But we have a 2K list. So it would start off with the Archregent in the top regiment there. He has 2 units of reinforced horrors, a unit of reinforced ghouls to act as a screen up turn 1, and the Crypt Haunter, because the Haunter Courtier can be taken in the Archregent's regiment, and the General's regiment gets +1 option available to it. So, Regiment 1 is those units there. Regiment 2 is the Gore Warden, Moorbag Knights, and a unit of Flayers. This whole brick for 500 points is my harassment bros. Their whole job is to go ruin everybody else's battle tactic. Wherever you don't want them is where they're supposed to be. And that's it. That's it. The if I need to, the Archregent can use his ability to like give bonus movement to some of these dudes. One thing I didn't really talk about is the Flayers can pick up a hero and move them. I don't necessarily see a lot of utility for that in my particular list, but I could be wrong. And that's their whole job. Also, I think the Flayers Screaming is the only gun I have in the entire list. And then, oh, I'm so sorry. Can't see most of it because my camera is covering it up. I super apologize. Thank you for saying something, Tori. Let's see. There we go. There we go. That zooms it in quite a bit, and you can see everything. Thank you so much for saying something. So anyway, yes, that's what I'm looking at for Regiment 1. It's going to be the Archregent, even though it says Cardinal. 2 units of Reinforced Horrors, a unit of Reinforced Ghouls, and the Haunter. The Regiment 2 is the Gore Warden, Morbeg Knights, and Flayers. Regiment 3, because I am going for 3, is the Archregent and a thing of Crypt Guard, who for 310 are essentially there to make sure that everything else goes well. So I don't have a massive plan for that 310 there at the bottom. I could probably reinforce some stuff in the other sections and probably make that a little bit more streamlined. But the reason I picked this is because, one, I really, really want the Archregent. I'm sorry, not the Archregent. The Cardinal's ability. I'm going to do this because I keep reading them. It's driving me nuts. There we go. Now it all says the right thing. Regiment 3 is the Cardinal and Crypt Guard. The reason I want the Cardinal is because I want that Orator ability where he's able to give more Noble Deed points to somebody. Between him and the Throne, I should be able to get some hero, whichever one I want, at 6 Noble Deed points pretty stinking quick. And I've thought about doing that with the Archregent or the Gore Warden, and then starting turn 2 having the Gore Warden start doing his teleporting around and being mean, because that means whenever he takes the Morbeg Knights and the Flayers with him, he's taking that bubble of +1 with him as well. So I think that's an interesting idea, and then we can throw the Regent or the Cardinal up there and do whatever we want to do. But I do think that the race, so to speak, is going to be between 2 and 3 drops for your army. This one's 3. And I feel fairly good about it. I don't know. Nothing stands out as being such a massive mistake that I'm like, eh. But I think if I was going to tune things, I'm not super tied to that 3rd regiment with the Cardinal, but I just really like his ability. And frankly, I like his model. So, you know. Anyway, I would love to hear your thoughts on my list. Go ahead and leave them down below. Here's what I was workshopping for 1K to take to Holy Havoc, in case you're curious. A base Ghoul King on foot, 2 units of fully loaded Horrors, a Haunter, and a unit of Crypt Guard. So, yeah. I'd love to know your guys' thoughts on this. If you are a Flesh Eater Courts player, please tell me your thoughts or where you would do better to have Horrors kind of be the center stage focus for your army. But I'm really excited for this. I'm excited for game night tonight. We're not playing full AOS because we're still waiting on everybody's rules. But I'm going to be doing some Spearhead, and I'm actually... Let me see if I can find it. Yeah, I'm actually building my own Spearhead terrain right now. So I'm going to be doing some cool stuff like that. These are cut to specifically match the size, so I'm making my own creepy graveyard terrain for my Flesh Eater Court Spearhead. Very excited about that. And yeah, so I'm going to be at Havoc. I'm going to have a great time. It's going to be a blast. I had a wonderful time a couple years ago when I went. So I will probably see you there, Tori, it sounds like. For the rest of you, I hope you had a good time just hanging out, painting, learning a little bit more about Flesh Eater Courts and my thoughts on them. If you have any thoughts on things that I said, please leave them in the comments down below, and I will chat with you all very soon.